This video is about how to find the area of composite figures. So what we really need to know first is what is a composite figure. Go ahead and open this up. A composite figure is just when you take multiple shapes and you put them together. All right, it's composed of more than one figure basically. So to determine the area of a composite figure, what you want to do is break that figure down into shapes whose areas you know how to determine. Okay, so it says to decompose. Really, that's just to break down. All right, and then once you've broken it down into those smaller shapes, or those shapes you know how to find the area of, then to find the total area, you can put it back together. All right, and so you're either going to find at the end, you're either going to find the sum, you're going to add those areas together, or in some cases you may have to subtract the areas and find the difference. All right, so let's just do some examples. In the first one, it says to find the area of the composite figure. So if you just take a look at this, you can see that this figure is made up of a trapezoid on bottom and then half of a circle on top. All right, well, I know how to find the area of both of those. So what I'm going to do is separate it into those two pieces and find both of the areas of each of those. And then I can add those areas together to find the area of the whole thing. All right, so let's do that. This half circle or semicircle, I want to start by listing the formulas. The formula for a semicircle is going to be half of the area of a normal circle. The formula for a circle is pi r squared, so I'm just going to use half of that. So if I substitute in what I know that pi is going to be 3.14, so 1/2 of 3.14. And then here I can see that 14 is actually the diameter, so I need to use the radius, which would be half of that. The radius is 7. So I'm going to multiply this by 7 squared. And I know that I would start with an exponent when I'm figuring this out. So 7 squared means 7 times 7, which is 49. So I need to multiply 3.14 first by 49. So I'm going to squeeze that right here. 3.14 times 49. 9 times 4 is 36. Carry your 3. So 9 times 1 is 9, plus 3 is 12. Carry your 1. 9 times 3 is 27, plus 1 is 28. Start with a 0. 4 times 4 is 16. Carry your 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. And 4 times 3 is 12. And add these up, I get 6, 8, 13. Carry your 1 is 5, and 1. There are 2 decimal places in my problem here, so I need to make sure I have 2 decimal places in my answer. So 153.86. But remember, that's the area of the entire circle, so I want to just use half of that since this is half a circle. I'm going to go up here and divide it. 2 into 153.86. So 2 will go into 15 7 times. 2 times 7 is 14. Subtract and get 1, bring down the 3. 2 will go into 13 6 times, so that would be 12. And then I'm going to subtract and get 1, bring down the 8. 2 will go into 18 9 times. I also need to bring up my decimal, so that's 9. 9 times 2 is 18. When I subtract, I get 0. Bring down that last 6. 2 will go into 6 3 times. All right, so the area of the half circle ended up being 76.93. And so then if I go over here and look at the trapezoid, I'm going to start with my formula, 1/2 of the sum of the bases, base 1 plus base 2 times the height. All right, so I can plug in base 1 is 14, base 2 is down here, 18. The height is making a right angle with the base, so that would be 10. And then I would start with my parentheses, so 14 plus 18 is 32. And then I have a choice here. I can do half of 32 and then multiply by 10, or I can multiply by 10 first and then do half of that. I'm going to go ahead and do half of 32 first. So 2 will go into 3 once. And then I'm going to bring down my 2. 2 will go into 12 6 times. So half is 16. Then I still need to multiply by 10. So 16 times 10 is going to be 160. All right, so the total area of the trapezoid then is 160. All right, so separately, I know the areas. To get the area of the entire figure, I need to add those back together. So if I add 76.93 plus 160, I want to know what the total is. So when I do that, I need to make sure I line up my decimal anytime I'm adding decimals. So sometimes I have to add some zeros. That gives me 3, 9, bring down your decimal, 6, 13, carry your 1 is 2. So the total is 236.93. Because this is area, my answer is still going to be in square inches or square units. All right, so look at the exercises below that. So the trick really at the beginning is just to figure out what shapes you're dealing with. So I can see here that this is a parallelogram, so I kind of draw a picture to remember what I'm finding the area of. And then I'm going to always list the formula because that helps me know that I'm doing the right thing. So area is base times height for a parallelogram. So in this case, that would be 8 times 5, which is 40. All right, and then I can see here that this is a half circle or a semicircle. The area for that is going to be half of a full circle, pi r squared. So I'm going to do 1/2 of pi, which is 3.14, times the radius. Again, this time I still have the diameter, so I need to change that to the radius, which would be half of 6 or 3. So I'm going to multiply times 3 squared. Start with your exponents. 3 squared means 3 times 3, which is 9. So now I need to multiply 3.14 times 9. 9 times 4 is 36, carry your 3. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 3 is 12, carry your 1. 9 times 3 is 27, plus 1 is 28. I've got 2 decimal places here, so 2 here, 28.26. So that was this part, and then I still need to take half of that. So that means I'm going to divide it by 2. So 2 will go into 2 or 1 time, and then I'm going to bring down my 8. So 2 will go into 8 4 times. It's going to give me 0. Bring up your decimal, bring down your 2. 2 will go into 2 once. And then I'm going to bring down that last 6. 2 will go into 6 3 times. All right, so the area of the half circle ended up being 14.13. And now if I put these two areas back together, I would be adding them together. So 14.13 plus the area of the parallelogram was 40. So add your zeros so that your decimals line up. This would be 3, 1, bring down your decimal, 4, and 5. So the area of the total figure then is 54.13. All right, and then the directions say to round to the nearest tenth. So I have a tenths place here and a hundredths place here. I want to make sure that I follow directions. So if I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, I'm going to look at the 3. The 3 is not 5 or bigger, so I don't need to round up. So I'm just going to leave this as 54.1. And then I'm using millimeters, so this is going to be in square millimeters, or millimeters squared, my total area. All right, if we look at number 2, I can see that these two figures are made up, or this entire figure here is made up of the two figures. It looks like I have a triangle. I'm going to start by finding the area of my triangle using 1/2 base times height. So then I'm going to use 1/2 the base of my triangle is the same as the side of the square, so 9. And the height of the triangle looks like it's 6. So 9 times 6 is 54, and then I still need to do half of that, so half of 54. 2 will go into 5 twice. Bring down your 4, 2 will go into 14 7 times. All right, so half of 54 is 27. That's the height of my or the area of my triangle. And then looks like the other shape is a square. I know the square is base times height. So I'm going to multiply 9 times 9, which gives me 81. And then if I combine these two areas, I would be adding 81 plus 27 gives me a total of, oops, that's an 8. 1 plus 7 is 8. 8 plus 2 is 10, 108. So the area is 108 in square feet or feet squared. And I don't need to round this time because I don't have any decimal places. All right, moving on to number 3. And this time it looks like I have the area of 2 rectangles. So I have a larger rectangle and a smaller rectangle. I'm going to find the area of the larger one first. I know the area of a rectangle is base times height. So for this large rectangle, I'm going to be multiplying 12 times 10. Hopefully you can do that one in your head. That's 120. The area of the small rectangle is still going to be base times height. This time I'm going to multiply 5 times 2.5. And just to make things simpler, I'm going to change that fraction into a decimal. So hopefully you know that 1/2 is 0.5, so I can write that as 2.5. If you've forgotten that, you can always use a typo or divide in order to change your fraction to a decimal. So remember how to do that. You're just going to divide, add your decimal, because you can't divide into 1, so you'll go into 10 5 times. All right, so we've got 2.5 times 5. So if I go ahead and multiply those numbers, 5 times 5 is 25, carry your 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. I have 1 decimal here, so I want to have 1 decimal here. The area of the smaller rectangle is 12.5. Now, this problem's a little different because you're finding the area of just the shaded part. So what they've really done here is they've taken a larger rectangle and they cut out the center of it, kind of like a donut. So the area didn't get larger, it actually got smaller because this piece is now missing. So this is one of those cases when we wouldn't add the two areas together. Instead, we would subtract the two areas. So if I want to subtract 120 and 12.5, I need to make sure I am lining up that decimal. So this is one of those cases, again, where I have to add a 0 and a decimal in order to be able to subtract. All right, so be careful borrowing. 10 minus 5 is 5. Bring down your decimal. 9 minus 2 is 7. 1 minus 1 is 0. And then I'm going to bring down that last one. The area of the shaded region then is 107.5. And this would be in square inches. Right? This one, because it has a decimal, I want to make sure it's rounded to the nearest tenth. This is the 10th place, so that would be round it to the nearest tenth. I don't need to round it. It already is. All right. Last problem in this one, you can see that I have a square, and this little piece right here looks like a trapezoid. So I'm going to use those two formulas. So for this square, I'm using base times height. So this square is going to be 7 times 7, which is 49. And then the trapezoid, the formula for that is 1/2, base 1 plus base 2 times the height. Sorry, I'm running out of room there. So when I fill in the numbers for this, I'm going to do 1/2. The top base is 5, and the bottom base is not the entire thing, okay? It's just part of 14. So I have to figure out what this part of the 14 it is. So I can see that the square, they're going to be the same on every side. So this part across from here is 7. So if I use 7 for the square, then what's left over for the trapezoid? Well, another 7, because 14 minus 7 is 7. So the bottom base is 7, and then the height is making that right angle. So the height is 5. So start by using or adding in the side the parentheses. 5 plus 7 is 12, so now I have to do 1/2 of 12 times 5. All right, and here's again, I have a choice. I can do 1/2 of 12, or I can multiply by 5 first and then take 1/2 of that. Well, 1/2 of 12 is easy, that's 6, so I'm going to do that first, and then multiply by 5 to get 30. So that's my trapezoid. All right, and then this time, these areas, they're just being kind of squished together, so I'm going to add them to get the total area. So if I take the 49 from the square and the 30 from the trapezoid, then my total area is 79. And this is going to be in square miles, or my miles squared. There's no decimal, so I don't need to worry about rounding. And my total area, 79 square miles. All right, so hopefully that explains how to find the area of a composite figure. So again, remember, you're just looking for shapes you know the area of. And then you're either going to add those shapes together, or if it's a problem like this one where a piece has been cutting out, you're going to subtract the areas. All right, good luck.